Narendra Modi is in Kazan on a two-day visit to Russia for the BRICS Summit. Prime Minister Modi was earlier today warmly received by the head of the Republic of Tatarstan, Rustam Minikhanov. Under the chairmanship of Russia, the summit is themed on strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security. This is the first summit of the grouping after it was expanded in Johannesburg last year. The BRIC as a formal grouping started after the meeting of the leaders of Russia, India and China in St. Petersburg way back in 2006. Remember, it was agreed to expand BRIC, B-R-I-C, into BRICS with the inclusion of South Africa in 2010. In fact, last year's expansion was the first such exercise since 2010. The new members of the BRICS this time around include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, United Arab Emirates. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi was also received very warmly upon his arrival at Hotel Korston in Russia's Kazan. Prime Minister Modi also met members of the Indian community who gathered at the hotel to greet him. This is Prime Minister Modi's second visit to Russia this year. He travelled to Moscow in July to attend the 22nd India-Russia Annual Summit, where he also held a bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Earlier in the departure statement, the Indian Prime Minister said, and I quote, that India values close cooperation within BRICS, which has emerged as an important platform for dialogue and discussion on a range of key issues concerning global development agenda. The Prime Minister noted that the expansion of BRICS with the addition of the new members last year has added to its inclusivity and agenda for the global good. Prime Minister Modi said his visit to Kazan will further reinforce the special and privileged strategic partnership between India and Russia. The Prime Minister said that he was looking forward to meeting other leaders from the BRICS as well. Let's go live across to Kazan, from where DD India's Jessica Taneja joins us with more details. Jessica, you have been reporting extensively from Kazan there, but today as we speak, all eyes are going to be set upon the meeting between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi. Outline for our viewers the significance as the two leaders meet. This is the second meeting face-to-face in almost 3 months between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi.
That's correct, Sakal. You'd recall back in July as well, Prime Minister Modi had made his first bilateral visit to Russia, and later on there were a lot of deals and pacts signed as well, particularly diversifying beyond energy and defense. So you saw a lot of collaborations in the past as well, but talking about the meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the evening, you can expect a few more outcomes, although we will await as to what the discussion was about with the President in the evening. But as you see, BRICS as a forum offers a unique opportunity for all its members to engage particularly on various different issues. But if you talk about the meeting with President Putin in the evening, it would certainly focus on many other initiatives, and also taking stock of what was decided and discussed in the last meeting as well. There is also possible talks of cooperation in the Northern Sea route. There was an India-Russia working group that had concluded right before his visit, and it had highlighted about India and Russia collaboration in about Russia and India's strategic partnership, and also how they could potentially collaborate when it comes to the resource-rich Arctic region. And with Russia's cooperation, of course, many other deals that have been signed would also be looked into, but you could expect something to that extent when we talk about the Northern Sea route, where the cargo shipment as well as the transit and many other initiatives that the two would plan. Of course, we'll know the details much later, but at this point, this seems to be quite important. And on the other hand, when you see the meeting happening between the Russian President and Prime Minister Modi in the evening, of course, there has been a relationship that has existed for many, many years. So expect some outcomes in the evening, but we'll know that later.
Okay. Overall, the overarching agenda as far as this year's BRICS is concerned under chairmanship of Russia, which, the timings of it also has added another dimension to the entire BRICS summit. Jessica, if you could just talk about the broader agenda this time around with the inclusion of new members as well.
That's correct. Earlier in the year, you recall that new members had joined the BRICS grouping, giving it more strategic importance, as many would look at it as an anti-Western front. But for India, that is not the case. You'd recall that India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, had pointed out that India is not anti-Western, it's non-Western, and continues to engage with various other nations, as it falls under India's strategic foreign policy, which is strategic autonomy. So given that, you could expect a lot of different bilateral meetings where the Prime Minister would hold later in the evening, tomorrow, when he will be present at the Kazan Expo, where the BRICS Summit will take place. But with the expansion circle, it's important to point out the number of countries showing interest in BRICS. Because if you look at the current financial order, many countries, especially of the global south, feel that they're still not included. They've suffered from the impact of COVID. They've suffered from the impact of conflicts in both West Asia and, of course, the Eurasian region. And especially when it comes to a financial, structure that was set up by the West, particularly something that many countries who are interested in joining BRICS would look for an alternative, not completely moving away from the existing structure, but having an alternative as well, where they could engage with many other countries apart from the West.
Okay. Having said that, for the optics, India is also seen as a very important bridge between the global north and global south and rest of the world, where India takes the leadership. Jessica?
That's correct. At the heart of India's foreign policy is also South-South cooperation, and you'd see on how that plays out at the BRICS forum as well. Remember in 2006 when it was BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa joined about a year later. Since its inception, it has been trying to make space for a separate grouping which could not be a counter to the G7, but if you look at the contribution of G7 to the global GDP, that would account for nearly 30%. And if you look at the contribution to the global GDP by the BRICS nations, that would account for 35.9%, and that's relatively that's 6% more than what you'd expect. So of course, the importance that comes with the BRICS nations is out there to see, with many countries, as I said, expressing interest because the current structure, the Western architecture that has exposed certain intricacies and also voids, sometimes dangerously weaponized for some countries. But for India, it's important to understand that the strategic depth, that engagement with countries, apart from its other multilateral initiatives, BRICS has remained participation in BRICS has remained consistent with India's participation, and the future looks pretty similar, Sakal.
So we can say BRICS reflects India's interest as much as India would reflect BRICS interest. Jessica, before we leave you, a bit more about such a warm welcome accorded to Prime Minister Modi at the hotel, not only by the Indian diaspora, but we could figure out there were some Russian nationals there as well. And a bit more on the itinerary on day one of Prime Minister.
Right, he was here at Kazan just about a while ago while we showed those visuals live on television. He met the Russians here from the Tatar community, which is 56% of the population here in Kazan. Very excited to meet the Prime Minister. They offered him sweets as well upon his arrival when he landed in Russia. And of course here there were dance performances. An electrifying atmosphere was visible with many people from the diaspora present here. Also more than 500 Indian students, medical students, pardon me, are studying in the Kazan Medical University as well as the Kazan Federal University for other courses as well. So it's important to see and how the diaspora really feels about Prime Minister's visit. We saw that in July as well, and the similar atmosphere was offered here in Kazan, as it is every time when the Prime Minister arrives with much fanfare. Talking about his itinerary moving forward, you could expect about in a few hours he will meet with the Russian president, as I pointed out earlier. That engagement, that is, of course, later in the evening, more engagements can be expected. But the Prime Minister would be at the BRICS Expo tomorrow and not today, as we're told.
Okay, we'll leave it there as of now. Many thanks, Jessica Taneja, joining us live from Kazan in Russia for DD India special broadcast. Thank you.